Good evening and welcome to the Hawaii Theater Center. I am Dave Moss. Thank you for joining us for Tuning Up with
Iggy. Hello.
And Dave and Iggy. We have a very special guest again this week.
Yes, we are so privileged this week to welcome Dr. Jeffery Boeckman.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm a little concerned about the seating arrangement here. I noticed that in other weeks, you would have the two of you and then another guest, and the guest would always be over here. And this feels, I don't know, conspiratorial. Inquisitorial, perhaps.
It's actually because I want to keep an eye on Dave, because if I'm there and I'm looking this way, I never know what Dave's up to. So
yeah, he's doing this because of me. Yeah, he wants to keep an eye on me during the broadcast here tonight in case things get out of line. You know, we're close to Halloween here. It's, you know, who knows where things could go this evening.
I was told to wear a mask. I'm sorry I've let you down there already.
That's okay. You know, I had a wonderful suggestion as I was coming to the show here tonight. I wasn't able to prepare this costume, but I feel like we should share it with you because it's funny, or at least I thought, and Donner thought it was funny, so I think that's important. But I was going to have a little bit longer red beard and some sunglasses and a hat and a guitar, and I was going to be a Mr. ZZ Top. And then I was thinking we'd get maybe a packet of Pop Rocks, and we just put it over there, and that would be Iggy Pop. So we'd be ZZ Top and Iggy.
You know ZZ Top isn't one person, right? It's a band?
It's a band, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I know more songs by ZZ Top than Iggy Pop. But I can't remember the one I remember from ZZ Top. Anyway, Dr. Jeffery Boeckman, Professor of Music and Director of Bands at UH Manoa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
My pleasure. And thank you to you folks and the wonderful folks here at Hawaii Theater Center.
So you're joining us for a performance this week. One of the many reasons you're here with us tonight, you're going to be leading the orchestra, conducting our program, Sweet Psycho Suite, on Saturday evening at 7:30. How do you feel about that?
I am over the moon. I'm overjoyed to be asked to do this, to work with this group. I've greatly enjoyed the times I've gotten to work with Hawaii Symphony in the past, and I'm thrilled you folks would ask again. I'm very excited about the program, about the music we'll be bringing. A couple of folks have asked me what the theme is for this concert, and a couple words come to mind. Old wine in new bottles, maybe, or handshakes across the centuries, but really I think it goes more to grave robbing.
Interesting. And that wasn't our intention with the Halloween theme by any means. But it does fit, and it's, you know, I when we put the program together, you know, it was that idea of looking at the past through a modern lens. So we will get into that a little bit later here, but I want to, as we have done in past weeks here, invite you at home to join us in conversation by texting the number at the bottom of your screen right here. At 808-528-0506. We'll take your questions. I hope you're sipping along with us this evening. Thank you to our sponsors at Kaka'ako Wines for this evening's very unique wine. What are we drinking this evening, Iggy? This is a wonderful Italian wine given to us by our friends at Kaka'ako Wines. It is an orange wine. You are seeing that correctly on the table here, and hopefully joining us at home, sipping this at home. It is that color. It is a white wine that the skins are left on, much like a red wine, and it gives it that orange hue. And we've had a few tastes so far, and if you're...
You have.
I have had a taste so far.
I'm waiting.
And yeah, interesting to say the least. And if you are drinking at home, tell us what you think of it. We haven't really talked about the wine in previous weeks, but this is very unique.
It's a unique color. It reminds me a little bit of those inside the piano of a Bösendorfer piano. The color. That's a little bit metallic. I did get the nose, le nez, and you shared some of your sentiments about the nose. I thought there was a little bit of rubber smell,
Rubber.
which is, not unusual for wine. What did you
There's a certain complexity to it at the very end of the wine that it's not like something I've tasted before. It almost, I'm a big whiskey drinker, and so there's almost like a Scotch quality to it, or an Irish whiskey quality to it at the very end. Maybe it's just the color that's reminded me of that. I'm not sure what it is, but of course, thank you to our sponsors at Kaka'ako Wines week after week. It's been a pleasure for us to try different wines and kind of this oasis, as we talk about here on Tuesday nights, where we get to have a little bit of taste of what life was like before the pandemic set in, and talk about things to look forward to in the future with the Symphony and our community and all of those wonderful things. So please join us in conversation, ask questions of us, and of course, we have a bottle of wine to give away. We will be sending one of these to the person with the correct answer tonight, and do you have a question for us?
The question will be coming up as soon as we talk about the program. But Jeff, I just wanted to ask you before, you said that this is as much of a social event as you've had in about how many months?
Oh, since March? Back then?
March.
It's been a while since we've been out of the house. We're trying to do our due diligence and be responsible members of society. And my wife, Joanne, and I have been pretty good about staying at home. We've been lucky enough, fortunate enough to be able to stay at home.
Sure.
But,
And I know I've run into you at UH because we both teach there, and we have one-on-one lessons in person. But does it? I guess Dave asked you already. This week you're going to be socially involved with the musicians. Are you excited?
I am. I'm very excited. I don't want to give the impression that we're not involved with our students at UH.
Right.
We're very much involved with them. It's just pivoted to an online environment. We can rehearse in very, very small chamber groups, but in terms of the large ensembles, orchestra, jazz band, large choirs, Asian Pacific ensembles, those unfortunately can't meet in person right now, and so we have pivoted to online, which we're still able to work with the students and offer them something, but there certainly is something missing when it's not making music in person.
I know you sent, as director of bands, you sent a general email to the lecturers, the teachers, because you care very much about the students, and you wanted to get a feel of how the students are doing since March, from an emotional stability standpoint, I guess.
Well, I think what I tried to express in that is, well, I'll just use someone else's words. The poet Robert Frost said, "The only way out is through." And to steal from another author, John Green, the only really way through is together. And that's the only way we get through this, is together. And this is one of the joys of making music and hearing music and experience, and just art. It does, binds us, connects us.
So actually, I don't know too much about you, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear your background.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Take us back to the beginning.
The genesis of Jeffery Boeckman, please.
San Diego boy. Do we want to start that back?
Yeah,
That sounds like a bad choice. Had to choose between sixth grade between woodshop and band. And it's no more illustrious than that. I just didn't want to get beat up all the time.
In Southern California?
Yeah, in Southern California, San Diego. And fortunate enough to play in groups in high school and the local youth symphony for a little while, and then go on to college, taught high school in California for 6 years.
But what did you play?
Well, I'm a lapsed saxophonist.
What's a lapsed saxophonist?
And someone who used to remember which hand goes on top, and I think I still remember that, and the reed goes on the bottom of the mouthpiece, but it's just waving a stick and yelling with most conductors, right?
Don't look at me.
At what point did you become lapsed?
As a saxophonist? You're very kind to ask these really uninteresting questions about me, but I'll keep talking. Most high school band directors develop high school band director chops. It's even called band director chops.
Really?
Yeah, the job can be very time consuming and all consuming for a lot of folks. And keeping up those chops at the level of performance maybe one had earlier in life becomes more and more challenging. And eventually at some point you just say, forget it. I'm just going to play piano a little bit.
Okay.
Isn't that a fascinating story?
It is, but I do have a question. Coming from Europe, how do you explain the rich tradition of band in the US? Because in France, in other parts of Europe, but it is such a big part of American education and music.
Well, Mr. Jang, I think I will take issue with that statement. The history of wind band literature stretches back hundreds and hundreds of years. Nay, in France, the French Conservatoire was founded by Bernard Serret, the noted band conductor, and was founded as, some people might argue, a vehicle for propaganda music to perpetuate the French state.
I would agree. However, it's part of a musical education that has to do with municipality.
No, you're absolutely correct.
Conservatoire.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe in the US, it's part of your DNA when you're in high school.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I'm sure the audience is enjoying the history tour of the wind band literature. You're absolutely right, though. In America, music education is, in public schools at least, not exclusively, but largely delivered through large ensembles, large performance ensembles. So if people want to learn about music in most American middle schools and high schools, the avenue, for better or worse, is through performance ensembles. For me, it's been a boon. I love band music. I love directing wind bands. But it's not the same as in other countries.
Even where I grew up, we didn't have a strings program at the school I went to. It was a band program, and I am okay admitting that I played the bassoon because there was no viola, there was no strings. That was outside of school. That was extracurricular, the viola there. But it was a band program. There was no string. There was no orchestra. And I think that's more and more common throughout public education throughout the country currently.
That would be a topic for another day when usually when a school has to cut something, it's usually the strings that go first, which is unfortunate, but the band is there. Does maybe have to do with marching band, maybe?
Oh, there is a centuries-long connection between outdoor music, ceremonial music, and wind bands, and that certainly continued on into athletic endeavors. And most major universities, certainly our university, the band program is very connected to our athletic band, to the athletic football, basketball, volleyball. Yeah.
And as director of bands at UH, I'm sure recording is a big part of your description, but you know everything that goes on in the state of Hawaii.
Well, my kuleana there at UH as director of bands is to kind of oversee and administer the entire band program, but there are people far more intelligent than me about athletic bands who are administering and running the athletic bands. I'm happy to be in a position where I can facilitate things for them and provide them opportunities and resources, but there are people better at that than me, for sure.
But I mean, from the grassroots level, at the elementary school and
absolutely, that's part of my job too, is to provide opportunities to go out and help and provide what we can to assist the middle school band directors, high school band directors, music teachers throughout the state of Hawaii. And we've been lucky enough with the wind ensemble, my group, to tour, actually, to take them over to neighbor islands throughout this island and do clinics, workshops, et cetera, and performances.
And you had a West Coast trip all planned, mapped out back in February, right?
We did. We were going to take the Symphony of the Hawaiian Birds on the road. We had done a few performances of the wind band version of that here in Oahu, and we were fortunate enough to travel over to Kauai and do a couple performances there, and then we were all set to go over to Washington State and perform at the College Band Directors National Association Regional Conference in Tacoma, and unfortunately that was not able to occur. Perhaps in future years.
This is the same Symphony of Hawaiian Birds that the HSO does, correct?
Yeah.
A new edition.
So actually, can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, because I was involved as well, but you actually were part of the birth of the project that involved so many people and composers and videographers.
From the
yeah,
egg.
so please take us there.
All right. Please, at some point, just rub your brow or something if I go
because
on
we're
too
talking
long
about something that
this.
was a great project accomplishment by the Hawaii Symphony.
Yeah.
You know, it's titled the Symphony of Hawaiian Birds, but so many moving parts.
And it's gone on to so much success here at the U of H and then beyond. You know, our colleagues in Utah Symphony
that's right.
have been using this as one of their educational outreach programs and reaching thousands of school children in Utah, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, take us back, not all the way to San Diego, but to the beginning of this project.
All right. So all apologies if I'm leaving people's names out that are so important to this project. It started well before I was anywhere connected to this. Started with some of our science faculty, in particular Melissa Price at the University of Hawaii, who I believe is a Hawaiian tree snail specialist, and I'm really happy that that wasn't the animal of choice for the Symphony of Hawaiian tree snails. That would have involved a lot of, well, yuan bassoon, frankly.
Well,
and perhaps some trombone slides and the like. Anyhow, that doesn't matter. So Dr. Price got this wonderful idea to marry science education to performing arts. She approached our music faculty, in particular our music composition faculty, with this idea about developing some kind of project with live music composed with the idea behind science education being at the forefront of it. That was a terrible sentence, but it's too late, it's gone now. So she got in touch with Takumi Ito, Dr. Ito, one of our composers, and the two of them just kept saying, what if? And no one said no. And so this project that started with perhaps more humble origins blossomed into something that involved 6 different composers, all writing different movements for this. It involved reaching out to our education faculty, both music education and School of Education, designing this, I believe, 16-unit curriculum that ended up being taught in the public schools. These school students would learn all about arts education, about the symphony, about conservation science, about these birds in particular, these Hawaiian birds in particular, and what these students could do going forward to help preserve these birds. It was performed first by the Hawaii Symphony in 2019, 18, maybe 18. Anyhow, it's I believe had a dozen performances with the Hawaii Symphony to, heck, over 10,000 students, and several community concerts as well. I am so incredibly lucky to be connected to it and associated with it. It's been a joy.
It brings to mind, you know, there's always these conversations in education, especially here in the United States, about STEAM versus STEM. The STEM, so science, technology, what's the E? And you'll have to...
Ennui.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. But the STEAM is bringing the arts into all of those areas. And so this is quite literally a project where it started with the arts and using the arts as a medium to bring all of these other science and technology and all of that into the conversation, which is just, it's wonderful. And I hope there's additional projects in the works through this same vein.
Yeah, it was very moving to see all the students at the concert hall being fully involved, and you had hula dancing, you had the animation on the screen.
Yeah. Forgive me, I forgot such an important component of this. 6 composers, also visual artists, who designed videos or animation that went along, that accompanied this music, or vice versa, the music was written to accompany the video. There was a hula dance, just all kinds of melee as well, all kinds of wonderful components that really rooted it in Hawaii, which is, to me, it's so wonderful that this has a life in Utah.
Yeah.
And an artist that will be here this weekend, Aaron Sala, was part of the narration as well.
He was, served as MC for...
I wanted to ask you, since you conducted the symphony a few times, this is a basic question, but you conduct bands, right? So, just a very basic question. What is the difference between conducting band and orchestras?
That's a good question. Generally, can we first just pivot back to how entertaining it was for the audience? That
Please.
These three, I'm assuming we were all music majors or liberal arts majors, struggling with what the initials stand for in STEM.
Yeah.
I apologize to all folks with science backgrounds. We'll get it. They'll get it next week. I won't be here, but they'll get it next week. They'll
Not
bring
a trivia
flashboard.
question.
Yeah, and here's our trivia question for this evening.
That could be the trivia question. Oi. All right, sorry. The question was band versus orchestra conducting. All
That's
right.
how the musicians respond to you. Is that
Well,
the difference?
well, I mean, all right, I won't be too flippant about it. Often, wind bands tend towards educational ensembles, collegiate, high school, community, youth. So there's often an educational component that goes along with that. You can disagree if you would like. My impression of working with you fine folks in the Hawaii Symphony and what I've heard from other folks working with orchestra, especially professional players, is less lecturing, I think, probably comes into it. Anyhow, but for a better answer, a more honest answer, often wind band conductors working with orchestras get a little bit confused and unsettled when this doesn't happen, right? With the wind band, we're so used to the immediacy of articulation, especially with percussion, but also a few of the higher woodwinds and brass, that when we conduct and give a downbeat, it happens on the downbeat. Right?
What a concept.
Yeah. Whereas with orchestras, and I think half of it just goes to the physical nature of the instruments and the way that resounds and the way, especially in the cello bass, that there's the physics of sound, right? When you're bowing, that it takes that long, and that's half of it. The other half is just the, insolence of the string players and their relationship with the conductor, I think. That between those two things, we get, that to me is one of the,
Sometimes you have to wait for the great things to happen.
This is great because this is actually the second time we've had a similar conversation about the response of an orchestra from a conductor on the show here. So for those of you watching week after week, thank you. And I think it is very interesting to hear the conductor's perspective of how the orchestra responds to a conductor. And I think, especially in the circumstances we are in now with a digital medium, those who are tuning in on Saturday, that might be something that maybe is more or less evident in a digital setting. And
Yes, I think a few components. I think it will be a sort of a smaller ensemble, of course, but there's a little bit of distance between each of us. So Jeff, I think you'll be maneuvering between, because we have pieces with very varied instrumentation. You'll have pianos, organs, string players. You'll have a clarinet. You have flute players. And by the way, I'm very happy that after a few concerts with just a string orchestra, well, we did have Scott Janish on the oboe, but to welcome a clarinet player, a percussion, a flute player.
we've worked our way up.
We're working on that one, yes.
We have 2 woodwind players this performance.
So it'd be great to welcome our wind.
someday maybe even a saxophone, right? If you really want to.
We'll
work
get to
up.
the Mussorgsky, yes, at some point. So very, very much excited for that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the program this
Yes,
week,
let's-
because I want to make sure we get to our quiz question, because the quiz question was not science, technology, engineering, and math.
Engineering.
Engineering, I was
Greg.
close. I was close. Just couldn't get it out. Language wasn't in there, unfortunately. So let's talk about the program
Entitled?
this week, entitled Sweet Psycho Suite. Kind of a play on Halloween and the name of the thriller Psycho, in which we will be doing the Suite by
Bernard Herrmann.
Bernard Herrmann. Yeah, Bernard Herrmann wrote that in 1960, early 1960, late maybe 59, for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, which I'm sure there are people with greater knowledge of film history than me that'll text in the corrections to what I'm about to say. This was a low-budget movie for Hitchcock. It was a kind of almost a B movie for him. He shot it on black and white and also shot it using television cameras, I think. As he had just gotten done doing some seasons of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And so when he was sizing up the rest of his budget, he still wanted to get Bernard Herrmann, who had just done a couple legendary scores for him, North by Northwest and Vertigo. I think those both precede Psycho. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. Anyhow, Bernard Herrmann still got the full fare as the composer, but the budget for the orchestration and the recording was minimal. So Bernard Herrmann went with strings only and a reduced string band. Just bare bones, only strings, getting rid of the big, full, lush orchestra that people may have gotten used to hearing his music. But boy, does he exploit that string orchestra sound. There are all kinds of
sounds come from just strings. Amazing, right? Sorry, I
your words,
you.
not mine. Your words.
No, it's very, very, very effective music. You know, you probably all remember the shower scene, and that is conveyed by the violins. So you'll have to wait until Saturday to hear those scary sounds. You know, you mentioned Vertigo. I did a festival one summer, and we performed Psycho as well as Vertigo Suite, and I believe Janet Leigh was the actress in Psycho, but also in Vertigo was Kim Novak, and where I played at festival, Kim Novak was retiring there, so she came to the concert when we performed Psycho and Vertigo. So very haunting music by Bernard Herrmann. Very much looking forward to it.
Which brings us to our quiz question for the evening.
Yeah.
Psycho, written in 1960, 2 years after Vertigo, 1958. Well done. What is our quiz question for this evening?
The quiz question is this. At the opening of Psycho, there is a very arresting chord played by these strings. It has often been called the Psycho chord, but it recurs through many Bernard Herrmann's film scores. And I think it's more apt to call it the Hitchcock chord. So what are the notes in the Hitchcock chord?
Or you could also ask, what type of chord is it?
Or what type of chord is it?
So you can text your answer to...
Bonus points for the actual notes.
2 bottles of wine. Yes.
Yeah. We should get actual notes, right? Chord quality would be fantastic.
We've had a lot of musicians win the quiz prizes lately.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Which...
All right.
We're glad you're tuning in.
Actually, what happened is that we were discussing our trivia question right before the show. We had a briefing meeting about that trivia question, and Jeff played those chords on the piano, and it was beautiful.
Serenaded. I think you could say serenaded. Yeah. That's more accurate. Serenaded with the lovely slashing murder chord from Psycho.
So, Dave, what else is on the program?
Well, first of all, we have a question about the program that we need to answer here. Yes, thank you. Will the musicians be wearing costumes for Saturday's performance? And the answer is...
I will probably be wearing a costume by Tori Richards. A nice aloha shirt and with a matching face mask.
And thank you to Tori Richards and Kahala for their generous support of our PPE and aloha attire, keeping us safe and stylish.
But maybe Jeff, we haven't discussed that. So Dave is my boss. Whatever Dave tells me, I will do.
So send your costume recommendations for Iggy and we will discuss. So the program, there won't be costumes, but there will be a narrator. We're really excited that Aaron Salah is going to be joining us to narrate the Carnival of Animals. Back in the late 40s, early 50s, Ogden Nash wrote some poetry to accompany the Carnival of Animals. And we are just thrilled to bring this to life with a dramatic reading from Aaron in between each of the movements from the Carnival of Animals. So, the instrumentation from Carnival of Animals is not something we typically see in an orchestra performance necessarily. It's more perhaps described as chamber music. It's set for just 5 strings, a clarinet, a flute, 2 pianos. So we have not 1, but 2 pianos and an organ on the stage this week, and percussion as well.
Yeah.
Jeff, is that a piece that Saint-Saëns was actually commissioned to write, or was that something for fun?
It was absolutely not a throwaway piece, but certainly something he wrote for himself and his friends. The story goes is that Camille Saint-Saëns was laboring with the 3rd Symphony, the organ symphony, and just needed a break from it. And so concocted this little musical play with some friends in mind, and that it was going to be more of a salon piece. In fact, either after or while he was writing it, he may have expressly forbid it to be performed outside as a public piece of his. He didn't want anything to interfere with his reputation as a serious classical composer. So it was more just of a novelty piece. If memory serves, I believe Franz Liszt was at the second of the performances just for friends, and Franz Liszt encouraged Camille Saint-Saëns to release this. People would really enjoy it. And the only movement that I think the composer released was the Swan for cello, right, and piano?
Correct. Yeah. So is it a case when, as soon as and rest in peace, that he passed away, then they revived the piece and just played it ad infinitum for the audiences?
I don't know. I think the first public performance of it was in the 20s, if memory serves. It was a number of years after he...
Because the piece is from
1886? I think that's right, 1886. And he passed in, oh my gosh, I should have this memorized. I'll hold this down low so it looks like no one's looking at me looking at this. Yeah, he passed in 1921. So actually, within 1 year of him passing on, they started to play this in public. And it has probably his most famous piece.
It has some very beautiful moments. This one, of course, is a lot of quotations, I guess. Oh, quotes.
Well, I think that's why we can file this under the grave robbing, is that Camille Saint-Saëns is disinterning a lot of music from earlier French composers, French popular songs, and they find a home in there. Heck, he finds a home for his own Danse Macabre, I think, in there as well.
That's right.
Yeah. Which,
by the way, even though I grew up in France, I still don't know, is it Camille Saint-Saëns or Camille Saint-Saëns? You are a PhD, so could you give us an answer? Or is that something they teach you in the university?
Iggy, you're right, I'm very well learned. 2 replies. 1, it's a DMA, so not real doctor, not a real doctor, not a real research degree. That was 1. B, more importantly, I don't know. Camille Saint-Saëns sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. People are obsessed with
Notice you didn't ask me.
He just bypassed him. With the cool-looking socks and everything.
Is it Dave Mo or Dave Moss? Which, there's a small town in France called Cassis. It's the same thing. Is it Cassis or Cassis? You probably know Crème de Cassis. Crème de Cassis, the liquor? Mm-hmm. No, anyway. So I think when you refer to the town, you say Cassis. But when you refer to the fruit, I think it's blackcurrant or, you say cassis. So,
isn't cassis a skin condition? No? I'm thinking of something
anyway,
else.
Where were we? Okay, so the animals. You have a favorite animal in the carnival?
Yeah, there are a few that I like a lot. I love that pianists are considered an animal. And there's a movement for pianists, in particular, struggling pianists who are...
They're supposed to what, practice?
I think they're working out their skills, and we're in particular on scales, right? Major scales, and they just can't seem to quite get it together. That's one of my favorite movements in there. And the Aquarian movement I find just so quiet and still and lovely.
We'll try to keep a straight face when we play that. Sorry, I don't know why that came up like that, but I just have a feeling that I'm going to have a hard time keeping a straight face at the concert on Saturday.
Well, the good thing is you'll be wearing a mask, so
that's true.
Well, so we have Carnival of Animals, we have Psycho. How are we opening the program? This is a piece that I'm very, very, very excited you suggested. This is an awesome piece. Tell us about Carolyn Shaw.
I am thrilled to get to have Carolyn Shaw's music performed here in Hawaii. I've been a huge fan of hers ever since I first heard her Pulitzer Prize-winning work for Voices, Partita, which I think won the Pulitzer in, oh my gosh, 2014?
Don't look at me.
That's close. Yeah, I don't know the exact years, but that was with Roomful of Teeth.
Roomful of Teeth. Yeah. Just if you don't know this piece, folks in the audience, Caroline Shaw, Partita for 8 voices, Roomful of Teeth. There are several, unfortunately, maybe pirated videos of this online. I strongly encourage you to go check it out. She is a phenomenal performer, composer, singer, violinist. Anyhow, for me, being a wind band conductor primarily, there's just nothing by Caroline Shaw for wind band. So this is an opportunity for me to get to explore this composer and her music that I just treasure so dearly. Entr'acte was written for a string quartet in 2011, I think for the Bretano String Quartet. She had heard them playing, and in particular, I think was drawn to a particular Haydn string quartet, Opus 77, number 1 or number 2. In any case, she was drawn to this, and in particular, the minuet and trio for that movement. And so she came up with this extended riff on the minuet and trio form, which I think for listeners might just wash over them. I mean, even for me getting to know the score, it's difficult to understand it all. But there's just something so engrossing about her language. And so, I don't know, viscerally connecting. She rewrote this for string orchestra for A Far Cry, a string orchestra based in
Boston.
Boston, thank you. Boston. In 2014, she was incredibly kind with her time, and I got to talk to her on the phone earlier this week about this piece and the origin and the history and a couple specific string technique things in it. Anyhow, I'm so excited about this piece. There are a lot of very, very delicate, quiet string techniques exploited in this that I think are going to come off really particularly well with the cameras up close and in this really chamber almost environment.
Yeah, I actually got to meet her once. She was at a festival, and we performed a piece by her for orchestra. And actually, the music director of that festival wanted her to conduct the orchestra, which she hadn't never done before. But as you know, in the old days, you'd had Brahms or Beethoven conduct their own pieces. So our music director wanted her to experience the same thing. So I remember she conducted the Mozart overture to the Marriage of Figaro. And just such a wonderful personality, you know, not pretentious at all, but just a pleasure to be with. And she was very scared to conduct the orchestra, but it went very well. So I'm glad you had an opportunity to talk to her.
Yeah, I'm very happy to get to talk with, very lucky to get to talk with her. For any fans of, that Amazon TV series about classical musicians in New York, Mozart in the Jungle. For any fans of Mozart in the Jungle, you might actually recognize the piece from that show. I think in the last season of it, when Lola Kirke, I think that's the actress. Anyhow, she's conducting an orchestra and encouraged this orchestra is performing works by that fantastic works that happen to be written by women composers. That was one of the pieces that they used for that. And so it's gotten a little bit of play from there. She said it's one of her most popular and often performed pieces.
And it's about the whole program. Like you mentioned, I forgot the term you used, Dave, but it's about current composers, maybe looking back or a journey to the back. So this is one of them because she's looking back at Haydn. And we have other pieces like that, don't we?
Yes, we have Respighi's Suite Number 3, his Ancient Airs and Dances, which is his interpretation, his take on the Baroque and early classical music for guitar, lute, those instruments, done for string orchestra. He was a historian and a composer and a musicologist, and he wasn't really known as a composer during his time. It was my understanding. It wasn't until quite a bit later that his pieces have been so prolifically performed, I would say.
Sorry.
I've been talking a lot. Do you want to?
I wanted to ask Jeff, because I looked at the program and there's great variety. Is it always a goal of yours to not just present music that's just there, but to offer an eclectic array of selections for the audience?
Yeah. Thanks, Iggy, for that question. I guess at heart, I'm just unabashedly a music educator to some degree, and it's difficult for me to conceive of a concert program that doesn't touch on a number of different eras, styles, countries, backgrounds, etc. That's something that's maybe even second nature to a lot of folks when they're programming. And as of late, maybe the last, I don't know, X number of years, including works by composers that have maybe been ignored or historically underrepresented, has become something important to me in my programming as well.
Very good.
That's actually been one of the silver linings to reprogramming and being forced to use instrumentation that the orchestra generally doesn't program for. We are an orchestra of 84 that does Brahms and Mahler and Harry Potter and Star Wars and everything in between. And now we are forced, because of the pandemic, and the challenges of bringing large groups of musicians together to perform, to really look through all of our repertoire with a different lens. And we've talked in previous weeks about why certain compositions were performed, and I hope that 100 years from now, people will look back at the history books and say, well, remember the time that the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra performed 3 weeks of performances in a row where there was people of diversity on every program, a female composer on every program. And that was the tipping point for the entire industry to be more inclusive about what's performed, how it's performed. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you touched on it a little bit just in what you said before about the kind of the education side of the performance experience, but how far can we go with this? How far should we go as an educator who's looking at future generations of music listeners, of performers, of educators? How important is that conversation now and 10 years from now?
I would hope that 10 years from now is maybe optimistic. I would hope that at some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, this is a conversation that doesn't take place. Yeah. Where it's just become so accepted and normal. And that we don't say things like, let's have a piece by a woman composer on this concert. I mean, there are a lot of folks who probably would take offense to that statement. Yeah. Rather than just, we have fantastic works, and this one happens to be by a female composer, this one happens to be by, as an educator, I look at my ensemble and the students that are sitting in there, and I think, golly, if we haven't played something by a composer that looks like this person, in 4 years they're in college with me, and we've never. That's a large institutional failing. Classical music. This is getting pretty serious. No,
we'll get out of it. But I think it's an important conversation.
I could talk about it for 3 hours, which is why I'm a little bit. I don't want to get into this too much. I have a lot of work to do as a teacher, educator, programmer, conductor, with my understanding of what constitutes excellent music, what constitutes the canon, how music gets in the canon. I mean, there are a lot of contributing factors there besides what's great music. Yeah. Anyhow, I'll leave it at that. My hope is that if we do our work really well, that we move to a place where this isn't a conversation we need to have as much.
Yeah. Not filling benchmarks. We're just creating really great art that fills the stage and fills the concert hall and is reflective of our communities.
But to get there, there's work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for going down that route with me there. It's important to our work here at the Symphony. And so on a lighter note, Respighi.
Oh, we're back to Respighi.
Back to Respighi.
I was so happy you were the one who was going to transition from that to noted dead white male composer Respighi.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Ottorino Respighi, he has a first name.
It's so inspired by those compositions for the lute.
Inspired.
But I think you mentioned. I think we can go pretty far as Renaissance, probably, right?
Late 16th, early 17th century Italian composers, right? And he's relying on a musicologist a generation earlier than him, Oscar Cilasotti. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Cilasotti? That sounds right, right? I think that's the name on the wine bottle. Doesn't matter. Anyhow, so Oscar Cilasotti is a musicologist. He wrote a large treatise that assembled all of these songs for early lute, early Italian guitar, and it's from those that Respighi, Ottorino Respighi, got a lot of his source material. And a number of those in the intervening years since these ancient airs and dances were written have been shown to maybe not really follow the actual historical antecedents, that there's a lot of transcription errors and the like. But Respighi does some really interesting things in translating music for lute or guitar to strings. Like in the last movement of this Ancient Airs and Dances, there's a lot of really interesting strumming and picking technique for the lute that he translates to strings with a lot of crossbow, a lot of quadruple stops and the like. And
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. I've done that piece one long time ago, and it had been a while. So happy to do it again with you, Jeff. Respighi, looking back. And so is the Albinoni Adagio?
Yeah.
Which is, reminds me of this joke. Who wrote Pachelbel's canon?
Go on.
Pachelbel. Who wrote Albinoni's Adagio?
Taco Bell?
Taco Bell? Is that where this wine? Never mind.
No, so Albinoni Adagio.
Yes.
Written by Albinoni, supposedly. But that reminds me actually when I was a kid. That was in the 80s, and my brother was a teenager, full-blown teenager, and he would just like close his door and then blast his stereo, and he would listen to Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, and every half hour, not ZZ Top, not Iggy Pop. It was more like Pink Floyd. Every half hour, he would also blast Albinoni Adagio. He was just in love with that music.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And so my parents, who love classical music but weren't in love with Pink Floyd, they just couldn't stand it. But then he would blast Albinoni's Adagio, and then there would be peace in the home. But that's a true story, actually. I'm not making that up. Sometimes I make up things, but no, this is a true story. I remember that vividly. Yeah. So tell us about the Adagio, please. Yeah, and is it actually written by Albinoni?
I don't think we'll ever know. And another Italian musicologist, Remo Giazzotti. Boy, there's another Italian name I'm butchering. I think that's on the back of the wine bottle. Remo Giazzotti, Italian musicologist. He literally wrote the book on Albinoni. He had written Life and Works, ML410, on Albinoni, who's a late 16th, early 17th century, late 1600s, early 1700s, crosses that threshold. Italian Baroque composer. Giazzotti said he found this fragment of a trio sonata, found this fragment in a German cathedral. Now, unfortunately, the German cathedral he said it found it in was Dresden, and he said he found it in 1945. And the Dresden cathedral, I don't believe was doing well as a repository for musicological finery at that point, as it had been firebombed, right, during World War II. Anyhow, he said that the only fragment he found was this little part of a bass line and a couple other fragments. And so he took the liberty of writing this out as a full-length movement for organ and strings. The fragment was lost. Supposedly, who knows, this sounds so apocryphal, that on Giazzotti's deathbed, he admitted he composed the whole thing, but who knows?
So we don't know.
We don't know, but it certainly fits with our theme of composers reaching back to the past to pull things forward. Where Giazzotti, this arrangement or this setting, I suppose, of Albinoni's fragment, it feels like film music almost. It feels so unabashedly romantic.
And it's been in.
And it's
films.
been in a number of films. It's been repurposed for that, right? It's kind of a stand-in for romantic. Whereas Respighi, Ottorino Respighi, the way he treats these ancient airs and dances in his suite is a little more coolly and almost neoclassical.
Right.
You know, it predates Stravinsky's Pulcinella by, what, 4 years maybe? Not many. I think it owes more to that connection, to that neoclassical tradition, than to something so heavy and romantic.
Yeah, the Adagio has a lot more butter than the Respighi.
Mm-hmm.
You are just setting up these next conversations so well, butter and these Italian names. But first, we have a winner. We have a winner, Jason Ellis. Correct answer. Thank you so much. And he's a flute player. Loved the aquarium, and he had never heard the entire piece before. So, Jason, Saturday night, we look forward to seeing you on the other side of the camera. And also, looking at our wonderful comments that are coming in, Mari would like to do a little quiz here.
Oh boy. Is that the Mari who I think it is?
It is. I think this is my bathroom break. You're up, Iggy.
So there's 15 questions. And it's, can you tell your pasta from your composer? So first question. So Preze is a pasta or a composer?
This reminds me of this game that we love to play at home, this online game, You Don't Know Jack. I assume we'll get something in the mail from them as an endorsement deal.
Definitely.
Now.
Definitely.
Anyhow, that was a stall. Did anyone come up with anything?
Dave?
I'm going to guess pasta.
I think we should guess pasta.
All right.
15 of these?
Campagnoli.
Must be a composer.
Yeah, definitely a composer.
Oh.
Yeah. Bassini.
Bassini. This can't possibly be interesting to anybody other than Mari. Is it? We'll keep going.
We'll do a few more of these.
All
here.
right.
Tastaroli.
That's a car. I think I'm going to buy one of those.
The car.
Ah, I'm pretty sure that's a car.
Okay.
And Rosa Testarossa is when it's this color. I think when it's painted this color.
This is actually a lot of fun, and actually we've only gotten one of them right so far. So we may need to drop this into the chat box here in our follow-up email so everyone can play along.
Oh boy.
Thank you, Mari, for that. I personally enjoyed that, despite our guests here.
I think Mari's going to have to be our guest.
I apologize on behalf of all pasta.
Wonderful. Let's get away from music for a second. Outside of conducting, outside of the U of H, what's life like here for you, Jeff?
Life here in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Golly, the last 6 months notwithstanding. My wife Joanne and I, we moved over here in 2011. This position opened up here at University of Hawaii, and Joanne was willing to just jump and make a leap over here with me.
Where were you before?
Purgatory? San Bernardino. Do you know where that is in California? San Bernardino? I shouldn't make ill of it. If anybody from San Bernardino is watching, we'll have a nice gift set from You Don't Know Jack ready for you at the end of the broadcast tonight. Anyhow, San Bernardino at California State University. I'm very lucky to have a position there, and my wife Joanne and I were very happy there. And this position opened up, and it's a heck of a music program, heck of a band program, and what an opportunity for me. So we came over here, brought our dog with us, and I've been really, really happy here. Very happy to make connections with the music community, make connections with Hawaii Symphony. I'm going to tie it back to UH a little bit, if that's okay. Yeah. My work there at UH, we've been really, really happy to connect, I guess, further our connections with the Hawaii Symphony. Virtually almost all of our applied lecturers, our applied faculty are members of the Hawaii Symphony. And we have them as guest artists, guest performers, doing clinics, workshops, etc. on our campus. So that's something I'm very, very pleased with, and look forward to continuing that relationship.
Well, thank you. And I've noticed since you came here that UH has, of course, the full-time faculty members, but has a plethora of part-time, like myself, adjunct faculty, lecturers, and so thank you for making us feel part of the family, of the UH family. I think sometimes we do our job, but I know under your leadership, we've always felt like we were engaged in the UH programs, whatever they may be. You have a smirk on your face, but I'm being very sincere about it.
I'm not smirking at all. I appreciate it. That's what I want. That's what I wanted, and I'm happy it's coming to some fruition.
I do have one last question about band. What would happen if all?
So Dave,
what would happen if all the band musicians would start vibrating? You know, because like string players, we're all vibrating. But what would happen with all the clarinet, bassoons, flute players? They would.
A lot of the winds and brass are capable of vibrato. Nay,
Right.
encouraged vibrato.
But as a group?
Yeah. Like if you got a saxophone ensemble, certainly
Yes.
you're going to have a lot of agreement on partials across, so it's much easier for them to vibrate across. Okay. This is one of the challenges. We're getting into the reeds here.
Sorry, and we have 2
the reeds
minutes
and the brass.
Yes.
Hey, that one's for free. Getting into the reeds here a little bit. The overtones are so sympathetic across the string ensemble, right? And then when you put that against winds and brass, it's just, we're not built in the same overtone register, so we can't sing and vibrate quite the same way a string orchestra can.
Sorry, Dave.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, can I go back to one of your questions?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry. You asked me earlier about the outside of music.
Yeah.
And this is how I should answer that, because this is how I honestly feel about it the most, is the best thing, outside of music, the best thing in my life is Joanne, my wife. Number one.
Wow.
You've met her.
I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I look forward to meeting Joanne when those things are allowed again. And your dog, what kind of dog, I have to ask?
Well, that dog, unfortunately, Kika passed on.
Oh,
She was shepherd mix.
okay.
And Max is with us now at home. Hi, Max. Go to bed. Max is home now. He's a poi dog.
Okay.
We're not exactly sure what species he is, but he's a good guy. Got him from Hawaii Humane Society.
Great. A
Good
great
member of our family.
organization. Yeah.
Good organization.
Absolutely. And one final question before we wrap things up here. The answer to our trivia question for those people at home.
Well, you said we had a winner.
We did.
Oh, so we want the
tell.
notes?
Yeah, otherwise people can't sleep at
All
night.
right. I'll give the notes, and you will give the chord quality.
No, minor, major. Okay, yes, okay.
All right. So the notes for the opening memory serves, it's B flat, D flat, F, A natural.
Okay.
B flat, D flat. That's D natural, but okay. B flat, D flat, F, and then A natural.
So that would be a minor, major, 7th.
Minor, major 7. Awesome. Outstanding.
Bum, bum, bum. And if you listen to Vertigo, same chord, right?
Yep, the opening of Vertigo, same chord, starts with the descending E flat 7. Yep.
Like a dreamy.
It just rocks up and down at the same thing. Same chord. Hitchcock chord.
Excellent. Thank you. That was a great question. And thank you, Jason, for playing along with us. We'll have a bottle of this wonderful earthy wine headed your direction very shortly here. We have reached the end of our time together this evening, and I wanted to first thank you all for joining us week after week for these. Thank you for your continued support. Please tell everyone about the performance on October 31st on Saturday evening at 7:30 p.m. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to come together and create that community, even though we can't do it physically here inside the Hawaii Theater Center. So please join us. Thank you very much to Gregory Dunn here at the Hawaii Theater Center, Donard Sonoda, our wonderful videographer, Bob Dickerson on our audio, Spencer making us illuminate on the stage here, Kaka'ako Wines, all of the donors, all of the sponsors that have continued to contribute to the organization at this time. We rely on your support. And thank you, Jeff, for being here. I'm so excited to get to sit and talk and excited to see you take the reins of the orchestra this week.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thanks to the wonderful folks here at Hawaii Theater Center for having us.
So, one last thing, go vote. By the time we see you next Tuesday, who knows what it'll be like, but the most important thing is to go out there and have your voice be heard and vote. So, until next week, thank you so much, and mahalo for your support.
Thank you, everyone.